Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me today.
So, how would you describe your role today? I know you've got a diverse background. What would when people ask you what you do for a living, what is your description?
I help empower women by teaching them about finances. And really, I'm part of the sandwich generation, right? We've heard this term before, and I've got a daughter who's in college that I'm helping to pay for, but I also have aging parents that I help pay for, and will be, heading into some of these senior discount ages here not too long. And so, really kind of focusing on teaching specifically women in helping them to control their money, to learn more about money, and just get the financial education to survive a lot of times in this, current environment that we're in.
Now, I know you have quite the diverse background, and I know you were very successful with Remax office for 5 straight years and really killing it. What would have you transfer or transition careers when you were already on a successful track?
For me, it was my health. I think oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we tend to work crazy hours. We're putting all of our time and energy into growing our business, taking care of employees and clients. And I was reaching a burning point. And I thought, okay, well, if I keep going down this route, I'm not going to be able to help other people if I'm not going to be here much longer, right? And so I sold my last company, my insurance company, about 18 months ago. And, I did a lot of thinking, a lot of praying, and I thought, I've been in this money world for 25 years. How do I take what I've learned and really truly give back and impact the people around me? And so that's when I started on the mission of writing a best-selling book and going to events and being speakers and having a podcast and just getting out on as many platforms as possible so that I can teach people about money. And some of the simplest, terms can really go a long way with people, especially when they're budgeting with their finances.
Well, and I know today it's a difficult time for many people. I mean, we see in the news a lot of companies are starting to lay people off, but absolutely the insane inflation we've seemed to have lately, it's been a long time, and for most people, they probably never experienced inflation like this. I mean, I just look when I go to the grocery store and I'm paying 50% to 100% more for what I was paying for stuff maybe just 5 years ago. I look at housing prices. My own daughter has been shopping for a house, and man, the money doesn't go too far when looking for a house. And a lot of other basic stuff like gas in our cars and repairs and cost of materials, it just all seems insane. So when you look at all those bad things, I know you talk about having a money mindset to attract wealth. How do you focus on that when it seems like everywhere you turn, there's all these challenges?
Yep. I teach to focus on what we can control. So even as, a business owner, or perhaps you work a job, or if you're even retired, it's so important for you to understand your own numbers. And what I mean by that is you should have a basic accounting system so that you understand what's the money coming in, what's the money coming out, and what are your true essentials. You can get a QuickBooks online account for $20 a month and tie it to your bank and your credit card and run a report once a month and just see what does your household money look like. And I'm not talking just business wise, but as a person, we should know exactly what our household finances look like. You're running kind of like your own company, which is your house, and knowing what your true essentials are. I think, it is difficult right now for a lot of people. Interest rates are higher than we are used to in this past decade. Housing prices continue to soar. I think the real estate market is in a lot more trouble than the media is letting on because we're so focused on the presidential debate versus, how do we fix this economy? So I like to talk a lot about some just basic, simple tips and ideas that anyone of any age, any color, woman or man, can kind of put to use in their own household so that they can help make that dollar go further because of all of the challenges that we're seeing in this current environment.
And I 200% agree with you. I've always said the budget or cash flow analysis, or whatever people want to call it. I know budget people always thinking that is a limiting document. I look at it as a freedom document,
Mm.
because if you have your budget in line, and you know what your income is, you know what your expenses are, then you know it's okay to spend the money that you've budgeted for. But too many people, it's spend, 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 and hope, cross our fingers that we got enough money. And I look at things like, when you talk about inflation, going to a drive-through coffee place to get your coffee is probably double what it was not so many years ago. And yet it is so many more multiples of what it costs to brew your own coffee before you leave for work and put it in one of these, drink cups or whatever that'll keep it hot for 24 hours. You can save a small fortune by just looking at those little things. And it doesn't mean you necessarily have to eliminate, but if you just cut back, there's a lot of found money that people can find and then have money for other priorities. So one thing you talk about is a 7-day subscription challenge. Please describe what that is.
Yes, having the Apple iPhone has been incredible, but also very dangerous at the same time because we can go and add subscriptions just at the click of a finger, click of your finger, you double click it, reads your face, and then are already subscribed. And it could be a free subscription or maybe something that you pay annually, but then we forget about it and it just keeps renewing and we may not be even using that subscription. So the challenge goes like this. If you go into your credit card statement or into your Apple iPhone and you look at your subscriptions, jot them all down, write down how much you're paying. And I'm a very visual person, so I highly recommend that you make this a write down process and not just a read through process, because when you write it down and you look at it, your brain kind of understands it in a much different capacity than if you just go through and scroll. So write down all those subscriptions, and for each of the next 7 days, you're going to cancel one subscription. I've seen people who are paying for two Netflix, two Spotify's, and they just didn't know, and it just automatically renews. And there's so many things that they're paying for that, like you said, it's like lost money, right? So why not take back that control, take back that money, and put it back in your bank account so that you can go towards your financial goals? And there's so many of these subscriptions that we pay for that we forget about. And that's just money that you might as well be flushing down the toilet, right? So gain control back of that money and take that 7 days and cancel one every single day. And then give yourself 30 days, give yourself a month. Do you really need to resubscribe to that? Or can you find something else that might be a free resource that you can replace that subscription with and just use that money? Don't just put it in your bank, but put it towards your other financial goals.
As you were talking about that, all I think about is, like these internet services or cable TV where, you might be using it, but then it renews and they prey upon people's lack of staying on top of things because all of a sudden the bill is twice what they signed up for because they got a special limited time offer for the first, 12 months or 24 months. We'll give you this fantastic deal, and then they jack the price way up. And because of people not really paying attention or, not staying on top of things right away when they happen, they end up spending sometimes double what they could be for the same service. And then the other thing I look at is when I ask people, well, how many of those channels do you even watch? Or how much time are you spending, for the $150 a month you're spending, could you get a free service that includes the channels you even watch? I mean, I've got what came with my TV, and then I ordered another service. It's all free, and it takes me a half a day just to find out what's on, because there's so many choices. So, do you really need to pay for those services? So, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. So, next question I have is how to master budgeting so you can create a life of financial prosperity. And I think you've kind of touched upon this, but do you have some other suggestions on how you can save money without really changing or reducing your lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. So a big thing I like to talk about is discounts. And, a lot of people know military discounts and a lot of people know senior discounts, but senior discounts at a lot of companies start at age 50. So things like Home Depot, Amazon, pizza, travel. I mean, ask around, and when you're purchasing things, ask them if they have a senior discount or if they have any discounts, because there are discounts outside of the military, teachers, first responders. My daughter, we just had to replace her laptop and she got a student discount, but had she not asked that question, we wouldn't know. Oftentimes the retailers don't know to offer the just ask, what kind of discounts do you have? And you'd be surprised at how often you could save some money just with those discounts. And again, that's money that you're in control in, and then you're going to tell it to go to another part of your budget, on your form, on your budget sheet, and make sure that you're allocating that money to something else that's more towards your financial goals. But it's a simple question about asking for discounts. Another one, and I love doing this with either like cell phone companies or internet providers, is to ask them if they have a client retention offer. That's a trigger word for them. They know that you are shopping that policy or that you're shopping that cell phone plan. And I've had this recently where I called my AT&T bill and I asked them that specific question. Do you have a client retention offer? And they said, well, give me a minute. They came back and they knocked $15 a month off of my bill for no changes in my plan because they had a current promotion. But had I not spent the 10 minutes to go get that, then I wouldn't have known about it. And not only am I saving money this month, but now I'm going to save money every month for the next 12 months. And I'm going to take that money and allocate it to another piece in my budget. I'm a big believer in credit card rewards. I have a card that's just for my gas. I have a card that I use just for groceries. Now, I do pay my credit card off every month, so make sure you're able to do that before you start shopping around for different credit cards. But, I get 5% back on gas on one credit card, where the one that I would use for everything only gave me 1%. So it's really utilizing the offers that are out there, because that's just more money back in your control, back in your pocket that you're allocating to other parts of your budget. So those are a couple of examples I can think of real quick offline there, but just taking action with the information that you're learning, not just listening to it and say, oh, that's a great idea. Plan out 30 minutes in a week and work on one of these ideas and get money back into your budget that you are losing for something that you don't need to overpay for. And when you take that time and you allocate it, it really helps you to control your budget and to make sure that you are utilizing and stretching every dollar that you have worked so hard for.
Well, I got to say, I learned a couple things. I'm going shopping at Home Depot later, so I'm going to have to ask them about the senior discount, even though I don't want to admit I might be a senior. But, and the other thing is the client retention discount. I've never heard of anybody promoting that you actually proactively ask for that. That is a great idea. And the other thing I'll mention to you, so like what you talked about, I do the same thing. I got a 5% cash back on gas, and they offer 2% at a restaurant. So I've got a different card that gives me 3% at a restaurant. People might say it's only 1%. It's 50% more,
Right.
So, and then what you got to pay attention to too, some of these cards will give you these great discounts, but it's up to a cap, and after the cap, it falls to a much lower percentage. And if you just take a little time to, understand how you're going to be using those cards and to maximize them. I mean, I'm typically, I use cards for absolutely everything, and I typically get a few $1,000s back each year on purchases that I make anyway. So the thing is, being diligent about that. Most people just get a whatever card and they just do whatever. And one thing they don't pay attention to is things like what the interest rate is on the card if they don't pay their balance off. A lot of those cards are, 17, 20, 22%. And God forbid you're late once. I've seen a default rate as high as 47%. Unbelievable. And people don't realize that. And then they get into the default rate. One thing is you can also negotiate those rates sometimes with credit cards. If you get a little behind, especially if it's something like a medical situation or divorce, I've had people negotiate down to like a 1% or even a 0% rate to give them time to get those things paid off. So there's a lot of things you just got to ask, right?
Yeah, and if on your iPhone, there's a free app that usually comes with your phone just called Notes. I like to keep the notes about my credit card there because then it's easy for me to access. I don't have to memorize everything. So I know exactly which card to use in which situation that's going to give me the most cash back. So, sometimes people will say, oh, that's too much work, or I always forget. Just use your phone. It's usually with you all the time. So use that note feature and put which card gives you the best rebate on what you're trying to buy at that moment. And then you can easily look at that real quick before you go to the grocery store, before you go to the restaurant, before you get gas. It's going to be right there for you. And it's very easily accessible for you to, again, control your finances and take control of that money.
And I think right along with that, especially with credit cards, could be really dangerous if you're not paying attention and understanding what goes into determining your credit score will determine sometimes what interest you're paying on not only your credit cards, but your mortgage, your, car loans, appliance loan, and all these different things. A lot of that's based on your credit score. And if you have too much of a balance happening or too much, of anything is not good. If you have too many credit cards with too many outstanding lines of credit, that can hurt you. So getting in touch with how your credit score works can also pay big dividends. Do you ever get involved with that?
A little bit, yeah, definitely need to pay attention to it. I mean, I think we just need to really pay attention to everything that we're using in our life, whether it's your checking account, your credit cards, you know, that you're paying for. When you pay more attention to what you're actually costing or what's costing you, then you're going to be more in control and more cognizant about how you're allocating your hard-earned dollars. So I definitely agree with you on that.
So for, really, and this isn't something that you got to spend 10 hours a week on. How
Mm-mm.
much time would you say once you get set up? It might take a little bit of investment in the time in the beginning, but like you talked about, using notes, using a simple budgeting app and things like that. And I know we have created an app for our clients that they can use for budgeting that we don't charge them for. But now I'm thinking maybe we should, but we don't because we see that as such a valuable tool. But how much time do you think it takes for you to stay on top of this stuff?
I would break it down into pieces. I believe when you're working on any type of goal, whether it's financial or otherwise, you break it down into smaller pieces so it doesn't seem overwhelming. So make a list, are you going to look at your credit cards and what the rebates are? Are you going to shop around your cell phone? And make a list of things that you want to start looking at, paying attention to, and negotiating. And then time block, maybe 10, 15 minutes this week. I'm going to look at my credit cards and I'm going to review them and figure out who gives me the best cash back for things that I purchase all the time. Next week, maybe I'm going to shop my cell phone and call them and say, hey, what kind of retention offer do you have? And if I don't like what they've said, then I'll check out some of the other resources. The following week, I might look at my credit cards and figure out like what kind of interest rate. If I'm not able to pay them off right now, maybe I start making those calls to ask them to reduce the interest rate. So just break them down into small bite-sized goals and every week tackle one of them. And then celebrate. Don't celebrate by going out and spending money, but maybe tell your advisor or, tell your spouse or tell your friends about it. Tell them what success you had and how you were able to save some money so that you could share that knowledge with other people and help them along on their financial journey as well.
So just to put that in perspective, when you talked about getting that retention discount of $15 a month, that's $180. And let's say they said no, they said yes to the retention discount. You spent 15 minutes. That comes out to like $720 an hour. That's amazing. And people keep saying they don't have any time, but yet they go to work for a lot less than $720 an hour. It's worth doing. And what you talked about, if you can save 15 here and 20 here and 30 there, before you know it, you're saving a lot of money. And just being on top of it, once it becomes habit, it really isn't a lot of extra time, is it?
Absolutely. Agree with you 100%.
So another thing that you talk about is little leaks sink ships. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I mean, we talked a lot about budgeting and how to help, preserve some of that money that you hard for. And that's what I consider as little leaks, $15 here, $20 here. Things like your insurance renewal, car insurance, medical insurance, house insurance, all of those come up for renewal. And again, a lot of people don't want to spend the time to shop that because say they've been with State Farm for 20 years and they think they have the best rate. They don't know that until they spend the time to shop that insurance rate. But taking all of those small leaks or those small dollar amounts that you're saving will help you to meet your financial goals, but it could have the adverse effect. Small leaks will sink a ship. If you think about that in a very technical term, a small leak can sink an entire ship, but let's find those leaks, plug them up, and then help to make your financial house that much stronger by making sure you're not losing little bits of money in different places because you're so focused on paying attention to it that your money no longer leaves you, but now you're telling it what to do. So that's kind of where that term comes from.
All right, you had one other point that you were going to share with us, and that's the unclaimed property list that states have. Talk about that a little bit.
I love this one. I think so many people just don't know about this. And when you know things and you think it's common knowledge, it might be common because you've been studying money for so long. But each state and each county has their own unclaimed property. So if you just Google, you can do, I live in Florida, so Florida unclaimed property. And people ask me, well, what's that for? It probably doesn't apply to me. Chances are it does. So say, for example, you put a deposit down to turn on electricity. You moved into an apartment or a home and you had to put a deposit up. Well, and then you moved. You forgot to tell that electric company your forwarding address and they tried to send you a refund, but you weren't there to get it. So now they're holding on to that refund until you come claim it. And depending on your state and your county and what company it is, if you don't claim that refund, they then send it to the state or the government to hold on to it until you claim it because they want to get it off their books, right? So I've seen savings accounts closed and then you had interest due. I've seen electric deposits. I've seen refunds from different jurisdictions. But if you just take once a year, I go on different websites depending on where you live and I look. I put in my name, I put in my date of birth, and they'll tell me something that may belong to me and what company is. And then I go after and claim that. So I did this with my brother actually right before Christmas because he's got two kids and he was talking about how, they're really transitioning from gifts to experiences. And I gave him a website and he found an electric bill from years ago when he was in the military and he lived in Texas that he never got his deposit back because, well, he went from Texas to Italy, so they couldn't send him any money. And he claimed it and he got that couple $100 back. And that was a great addition to their family vacation for Christmas. So again, it goes back to time blocking, knowing where to find the money, knowing how to ask for it, and then just 10, 15 minutes a week, put into action something that you learned or do some research so that you can continue to control and tell your money where to go.
It's amazing. I've had experience with that personally, and it had to do, as an insurance agent, we get paid commissions.
Hmm.
And I've been in the same address for over 20 years and had some commissions that went to the unclaimed property list. Nothing changed about my situation. And for some reason, they decided to send the money to the state. And had we not checked into it, I never would have known that that even was there. So it definitely is something you want to check. Now, another one that's kind of on the same line, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but life insurance. The state insurance commissioners will sometimes have lists of policies that they couldn't find the beneficiaries for, and sometimes that goes to the unclaimed property list as well. So you may not even know that you're a beneficiary of a life insurance policy that maybe a long lost aunt, uncle, grandparent, or some type of relative or friend might have left you as a beneficiary there, but nobody could find you because back when that was written might be 50 years ago, and they have no idea where you are. But have you had any experience with that as well?
No, you definitely taught me something new. I'm jotting those notes down so I can add that to my list of reasons why you want to check for unclaimed, but I never thought about it from the commission standpoint because I did own an insurance agency at one time. So that's very interesting information. I'm gonna definitely have to look into that a little bit more.
All right. Well, last thing is, I know you wrote a book. Tell us a little bit about your book and where can people go to get it?
Yep, my book is called Empower Your Money because I wrote the book for you. I want to help you empower your money. It is on Amazon, and the reason why I wrote it is very similar to our conversation today. There's lots of little tips that I have learned, that others have learned, that all we can do is put it into a format for you to absorb. You as a podcast listener, radio listener, someone who reads books, but I want to give you simple action items that you can implement into your life today. And it's most time it's either things that maybe you've never heard about or you heard about, but you're not sure why it would apply to you. So it's 101 tips that just give you some, guidance and some information and some ideas so that you can go out there and figure out, is this going to apply to me? How do I use this tip or this idea to help save some money or to create more income to help me get to my financial goals quicker? And then what I really encourage people is when they do find things that work for them, to share it with other people. That way it's not just you and me, putting these ideas into action, but help impact the world around us. The more that we know, the more that we can teach, the more people we can impact, the greater this world will be, because we just need to learn more about money and this tool that we use. And I'm sure that you've seen this, but if you go to usdebtclock.org, we're $1.3 trillion into credit card debt. The student loans grow thousands of thousands of dollars every single day. And I truly believe that this is just a lack of education, that these are things that we can cure, right? This is not some unknown disease that needs a vaccine that we haven't yet created. Being in debt and having the lack of information is definitely something that we can tackle together, that we can encourage each other and teach each other so that we can be a more financially free country.
And when you were talking, it makes me think you could also look at the U.S. debt clock at that setting in every state, and it's almost mind-boggling how quick we're adding on to the debt, and it can be really discouraging. And I hear a lot of people complaining, saying, these doggone politicians, they're, spending money they shouldn't be spending and everything. And, I look at it, it's our fault. We're a government of the people, by the people. And if we're not keeping our own finances in order, how in the world are we ever going to keep our politicians accountable? And if you can't manage your own budget, how in the world can you expect people to manage the national budget? And I think if we get our own households in order and we start living the walk, then we're able to talk the talk. And when talking to politicians, I think we have a lot more credibility than when demanding that they be responsible with our checkbooks. So my hope is that everybody learn from this, because our federal government, they certainly slam out checks. I just read recently that we did something like $47 billion to get 8 charging stations for electric cars. Now, whether you're for or against electric cars, 8 charging stations for $47 billion, that just seems to me to be outrageous. And maybe the U.S. government should have checked and seeing if there was an electric discount or something else to put these stations up. But I don't think anybody asked, because they just keep writing out the checks or putting it on the government credit card. And eventually we're going to have to pay for all that stuff. So we need to make smart choices. We need our country to make smart choices. And I've told a lot of people this recently. I said, it's amazing how well we live, as irresponsible as we've been. And if we just get things cleaned up and expect more out of our leaders, and we do more for ourselves, just imagine how good it could be when you see all this waste. So, Angela, I really want to thank you so much. This has been a very enlightening conversation. And one more time, if somebody wants to get your book, how do they get it?
Yep. Empower Your Money is located on Amazon.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much. I would love to have you back on again. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and I think this is where all planning for financial security now and in the future has to start with understanding your cash flow. And you just gave some fantastic ideas on how to end or lower the expense side without changing your lifestyle by leaps and bounds. So thanks again for sharing today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Empower Her Money podcast. I am grateful for you. Please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, like this podcast, share it, subscribe, and let's keep teaching others how to take control and be empowered with their finances.